Good evening, Mr. Logan. Can you hear me okay out there on Zoom?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. I was trying to find my mute button.
Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, there we are. How was your time off?
It was fantastic. Believe it or not, it was actually quite a bit warmer in East Alaska than it is
Oh,
here.
oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Wow, that is amazing.
yeah, they had a little heat wave and we had a little cold snap, I think.
Just a little, huh? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I have, wow, a loud microphone tonight. I have 6 PM. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If someone in Zoom land would like to chime in and make sure they can hear me, I'd appreciate it.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. We got a full board tonight, and with that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, moving on to item 2, do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to go ahead and approve it.
I'll move that we accept the agenda.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Do we approve tonight's agenda or accept tonight's agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or is there any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda, there's nothing there, so no action tonight. So we will skip that. We'll go straight to reports. Go with the trustees, starting on my right.
Nothing.
Trustee Walker, trustee Ives, trustee
report.
Bell. Okay. There are some things I'm going to report on later, mainly affecting the bridge and potential funding options. We did get the 2025 budget has been submitted and accepted by the state. And assuming that everything goes well tonight with the audit report, Bo and I will likely stick around tonight and try to get that submitted to the state as well, because it is preventing us from applying for the funding. So are there any staff reports we need to go over?
I don't have any staff reports.
Okay. Come to our first public comment period. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to have some public speaking? Not seeing any. How about on Zoom?
I don't have anything coming in from Zoom.
Okay. With that, we'll move right into our business items. The first, presentation 2023 audit report. Mr. Logan of Logan and Associates, you are up.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we got you.
Good, great. Okay. My name's Kyle Logan. I am the owner of Logan and Associates, the town's independent audit firm. And I'm here tonight to present the results of our audit of the town's 2023 financial statements. And so our audit process, we started middle of the year last year, and we picked, samples of checks and payroll transactions, building permits, and certain other grant transactions to kind of test your internal controls as far as making sure that, disbursements being paid to vendors and amounts being paid to employees have the proper approvals in place, have the proper supporting documentation in place, and also verifying that they're recorded in the accounting records properly. And then after that, we also send out third-party confirmations to all the banks and financial institutions, primarily to make sure that the cash and investments that the town has recorded in the accounting records is what the financial institutions are showing. We verify certain revenue streams with the state and the county and other local government agencies. Again, verifying that they're properly reported in the accounting records. We read your board meeting minutes. We read grants and contract agreements just to see what types of things the board has approved throughout the year that might have a financial impact on your financial statements. and also to see if there's anything, unusual that would change our audit approach. And then we look at your balance sheet, certain revenue accounts. We compare 2023 balances with 2022 and have discussions with Becky and Bo as to why things may have changed between years to kind of get an idea of what is happening and what has happened. And so after doing all that process, that gives me a level of comfort to issue an opinion on the financial statements. Now, keep in mind the financial statements, starting on the PDF page of the board packet, page 6, that is responsibility of the town and the town's management. Our responsibility is to audit the financial statements and issue an opinion. And so following the table of contents is the independent auditor's report. And so that 3-page report talks about what our responsibilities are as your auditors, your responsibilities are as management. And then the very first section there is the opinions section. And that's the most important area in this 3-page report. And so for the year ended December 31st, 2023, the town received an unmodified opinion. Well, what that means in layman's terms, that means it's a clean opinion. What that tells you as a board, that is the best that you can receive from an independent auditor. What it also tells you is that all the financial statement numbers in this document, all the footnote disclosures, are fairly stated and materially correct as of December 31st, 2023. Okay. And so following the independent auditor's report is the management's discussion and analysis. And this is a written narrative of things that happened over the past year between 23 and 22, highlighting certain events and just kind of giving you some overview of the events and activities that were significant during 2023. And so then following the management's discussion and analysis, we get into your basic financial statements. And so on page 1 there, the statement of net position, this is like the balance sheet or a snapshot picture as of December 31st, 2023. It shows all your assets, all your liabilities or claims against those assets, and then the net position or net worth of the town is reporting similar to how a corporation or business would report on the full accrual basis of accounting. And so your town has 3 funds: the general fund, the conservation trust fund, and the capital improvements fund. These are all considered governmental activity funds, so they're all reported in one column there, as we see on page 1. And so the total assets at the end of the year, well, I don't know if you're the one scrolling through the report. That's on page 19 of the PDF. And so your total assets are about 3.7 million. That's an increase of about 500,000 over 2022. And of that, your cash and investments of about 551,000 makes up 15% of your assets. Your capital assets, which that's all your buildings, your equipment, your vehicles, and infrastructure, that's at 2.3 million, which makes up 63% of your total assets. So that's the biggest piece of your assets. And then your receivables, which are your grant receivables, and the sales tax and property tax receivables, they make up about 22% of your assets at around 829,000. Okay. The next section, your total liabilities, this is 413,000. This increased about 156,000. That's because near the end of the year of 2023, the town received a few grants that were not spent until 2024. And it also includes the small loan that you receive from Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. And so then after your total liabilities, we get to the net position. And your net position is about 3.1 million. That's an increase of about 310,000 over 2022. And of that, the majority of it is invested in your capital assets at 2.2 million, which is 71%. And then we have restricted for Tabor and then any unspent conservation trust monies, leaving the unrestricted portion or unreserved portion of 853,000, or about 28% of your net position. And so what I always like to do with this unrestricted portion is compare it to the current year expenditures and expenses that are on page 2 to see how many months you have in your unreserved net position, which primarily is your general fund. And so at the end of the year, you had that 853,000 is about nine months worth of operations. So what that tells you is that, you know, for whatever reason, if the town stopped receiving tax revenues and other revenues, that you could sustain operations for about 9 months. Okay. Following the statement of net position is page 2, statement of activities. This is primarily your income statement. And so again, we start out on the left-hand side there with your total expenses and of about 1.1 million, slight increase over 2022. Nothing really significant between the different departments there. And then that middle section there are your program revenues. And these are revenues that you receive that are specific to the different departments of the town. And so your charges for services, your operating and capital grants. And so, you know, total program revenues were about 567,000, which is actually a decrease of about 184,000 from 2022. Well, 2022 included a lot of the money, the grant revenues that came in related to the Still and Basin project. And so that's partially why we have the decrease there in your program revenues. Well, then after the program revenues there in the lower right side, these are your general revenues, primarily your taxes. And so you can see they're about 706,000 at the end of the year. Your sales and use taxes make up the most significant amount of about 311,000. And then your property and specific ownership taxes that you receive from the county, about 228,000. Your short-term rental occupancies, about 71,000, and your franchise of 57,000. So these are kind of significant revenues. And again, these revenues, they're considered general revenues because they're basically available to the town to use to kind of cover the shortfalls that the program revenues don't cover in the different departments. So then we get down there to the change in net position or your net income, which is an increase of 182,000. Primarily increased your net position by about 6% over 2022. Okay. So again, these 2 pages, this is reporting similar to how a business would report. The next pages 3 through 5, these are your fund financial statements. And what this shows the 3 funds, your general, capital improvements, and conservation trust funds in their separate columns. Okay. And so you're, again, very similar to page 1. The only difference is this page does not have your capital assets or your long-term debt. Okay. Primarily because it's the modified accrual basis, which is very similar to cash basis reporting. So again, we discussed a lot of, or I talked about a lot of the balances and information on page 1. The one thing on here that's due from other governments of about 443,000, that's primarily related to your grants. And so it means that you've spent the grant monies, but you hadn't collected it till 2024. So again, we recognize the revenue when you spend the grant, okay? It also has in accounts receivable that 151,000. That's basically the amount of the Pikes Peak RTA loan that had not been used yet, or the benefit received, which was received in 2024. Okay, so we show that as because we have the liability on the books for the loan, but then we show the amount that hasn't been received or the funding allocation offset against it. And then we get down to the bottom section there, the fund equity or fund balance. And so we're at 916,000 for all three funds. Shows the restricted, again, for Tabor and your conservation trust monies. The assigned of 190,000, that's in the capital improvement fund. And then again, the unassigned of 673,000 in general fund. And so again, in your general fund, you have about 9 months worth of expenditures in that fund. Okay. Page 4. This is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Primarily your income statement, again, split up into the 3 columns showing the 3 different funds. And total revenues of 1.2 million, slight increase over prior year by about 91,000. Your expenditures are just about the same as your revenues at 1.2 million, very comparable to 2022. And so it left you with a basically net income before your other financing sources of $5,000. And so your other financing sources that they're about 2/3 of the way down the page is the financing lease proceeds. Well, what this is, this is related to the lease agreement for the body cam equipment for the marshal's office. And so because that's paid off over a 5-year period, we recognize the full amount of the lease in the first year. And then as it gets paid off, it will be reflected as the payments are made. Okay. So that pretty much covers the basic financial statements. Page 5, this is a reconciliation from page 4 to page 2, basically going from the modified accrual basis to the full accrual basis of accounting. Okay. And then we get into your notes to the financial statements. And so the accounting standards require certain information to be included in the financial statements that either supports the numbers up on pages 1 through 5, or provides a more detailed explanation of what is going on, with the town that has a financial impact. Okay. And so the pages 6 through 11, this is primarily the significant accounting policies of the town. And so a lot of this is very similar to reporting for small municipalities in the state of Colorado. And then we get to pages 11 through 13, and this is your cash and investments footnote. And as you can see, the majority of your investments are in Colo Trust. And so hopefully as time goes, you'll be able to get the benefits of finally the interest rates being more favorable, as they haven't been for so many years. So that's a good thing that you have that available to the town for investing. Following your cash and investments on page 14, this is your capital assets footnote. So this is the table showing all the assets that the town owns. Your buildings, your infrastructure, land improvements, vehicles, etc. And then on page 15, this is a new footnote this year, because we had the financing lease, as I discussed, for the body cam equipment. But then also we have the disclosure of the Pikes Peak RTA loan. And as you can see, there was the town's allocation for 2023 for the capital funding from the RTA was the 98,883. So that basically, reduced the amount of the loan at the end of the year. Okay. And so in 2024, the allocation was approximately 107,000, leaving about 43,000 that the town is to pay back to the RTA, which they may. I don't know if you've already done that yet or not, but I know in our discussions and wrapping the audit up, I think that was in the works. Okay.
Yes, that check has been sent.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And so then at the bottom there, that shows the remaining payments for the next 4 years on the body cam equipment. Okay, so you're paying about $6,100 a year for that. All right, then following the long-term debt footnote on page 16, this is a required disclosure, public risk, and how you plan or pay for that risk. And so the town participates in CIRSA, as I have a lot of my small municipal clients do. Again, that's just required reporting. And then down at the bottom, in note 6 there, we have the town's pension plans and the disclosures there, showing the contributions by the town and the employees, contributions as well to the pension plans. Then on page 7, the Tabor footnote. Again, this is required language, but it's specific to the town as far as the history of how the voters over the years have approved and authorized certain things for the town in relation to Tabor. And then on page 8, at the bottom of page 17, top of whole page of 18, this is the restatement. And so during the year, it was discovered that the loan with the Pikes Peak RTA needed to be recorded actually in 2022. And then also some of the grant transactions, as I know, Bo and Victoria and Becky they spent a lot of time working through this, and I really appreciate their help on that, because it was quite a mess, but they got it cleaned up, and when it was all calculated out, we determined, some of those numbers had to go back to 2022 because that's what they related to. And so that's what this footnote does. Again, even though we have these restatements, it wasn't to the level that it would cause me to not issue a clean opinion on the financial statements. So that's a good thing. Okay. So then following the footnotes, we get into the required supplementary information. So basically what this is the town's general fund budget. And so the thing we look at from the audit standpoint is, each year in December or January, when you approve the budget for the upcoming year, state statute says that you're not allowed to spend more than you anticipate or you budget for. And so we take a look at that. And I know the town, you did do a budget amendment during the year for 23. However, I think as we got near the end of the year, getting some of the adjustments done, it ended up causing an over budget of about 35,000. And so a lot of times I'll get the question, well, what's the ramifications of this? There really aren't any. You probably, or you may, receive a letter from the state auditor's office telling the obvious that you overspent your general fund. There's no repercussions of it in all my years of doing this. And so on page 20 there, we actually put a paragraph there at the bottom saying that, yeah, you overspent your general fund budget. If we didn't, you definitely would have gotten a letter from state auditor's office asking why it wasn't disclosed. So we put that in there to keep them happy. Then the next section, supplementary information. Well, these are your two remaining budgetary comparison schedules, your conservation trust and your capital improvements funds. Okay. And then the final two pages, pages 23 and 24, this is the local highway finance report. And so because the town receives the local highway users tax fund monies, many years ago, the legislature approved this report and said that it had to be part of the financial statements. Most of us auditors are not big fans of this report because no two municipalities prepare it the same way. So anyway, we do, look at it and test the numbers to make sure that they're materially correct in this report. But that's part of why it's in the other information at the very end. Okay. So that's the financial statements. Any questions on this before I talk about the management letter?
Hey, Kyle, this is Mayor Dixon. Is there
Mhm.
anything we can do on our end to try to get this completed by June 1st instead of January?
Yeah, definitely. But I think part of what happened this last year was your previous consultant kind of bailed on you guys when we got started. And so, and as we got to, so I don't know, I know poor Victoria, I think she kind of had a mess when she came in to clean up because things weren't all reconciled and stuff. So I would say the sooner the better, so that once all the numbers are finalized, then we'll be able to come in and shouldn't have too much problem auditing the numbers. And I know in 22 and 23, the town received a lot of grants, and I don't think people were really tracking them as they should have been. And so the numbers weren't being recorded in the correct periods. And so I think I feel comfortable that with Victoria and Bo, you guys have a better handle on what's going on. And so I'm optimistic that this can be done sooner. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
But yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'd love to get it done. I'd love to have all my audits done by July 31st. So that we can definitely strive towards that.
Okay, thank you. There's more questions on the board, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Don Walker, trustee.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the management's discussion and analysis. It's page V5, keynotes. So I'm just reading this, from top to bottom. I come down to your key elements, and this is after I'm reading that the town had a net increase in position of $182,000. The key elements are revenues have decreased, expenses have increased, property revenues have decreased, grants and contributions have decreased, government and general expenses have increased, public works have increased, and parks and recreation a slight decrease. When I'm reading those key elements, it seems counterintuitive to see that there was a $182,000 increase. Can you explain that?
Victoria, that may be a question for
Well-
you since we generate the management discussion and analysis.
Yeah, I'm looking here. I'll have to take some time to look into it. I can't answer the question right now. But, yeah, cause it's been a few weeks since I looked at this. So I'll tell you what, I'll take a look at it and get an answer back to you, okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Trustees, any other questions, comments?
Question from trustee Bell. Referring back to page 1 and the unrestricted, unreserved funds, you made note that it equates to approximately 9 months of operating expenses. I was wondering if you could comment on that with respect to, of course, more is better, but how would you qualify us in terms of our financial standing? Does that put us in fair financial standing, good financial standing? Below average, above average? Is there a way to qualify that for us?
I tell you, I get this question quite a lot. And my answer is always, it's hard to compare municipalities and say, yeah, you're in this top percent, you're in this low percent, because even though you may offer a lot of the same services, the makeup and your fees and your revenue generation and some of your expenditures are so different. But I would say having 9 months, the fact that you have 9 months of a cushion there is a positive thing. And it's good because, by the end of October, you guys have collected 99% of your property taxes. And so the fact that you have 9 months worth of reserves to cover cost, that's good. Okay. Now, I sometimes get the question, well, what should that number be? And that's my response to that is, what do you as a board feel comfortable with as far as your total, your total net position? What would you feel comfortable with? What would be a number that wouldn't keep you up at night worrying about, okay, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it through? But the fact that you're able to make it, 3/4 of the year, that's pretty good.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, because since I'm more familiar with businesses than I am with municipalities generally, it is especially in view of the fact that all of your revenue starts coming in pretty much in March, or the big chunk of it does. If you are in a position to easily fund that period of time before that, that's always a good thing. I like to, for most businesses, I like to be able to see them be able to fund at least 3 or 4 months. So having enough to be able to fund 9 months is pretty cool. That's better than I would expect normally. And it also puts you in a position to be able to think about funding things that were actually improvements to the city that are capital improvements, and not just funding your operations. Does that make sense?
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for both of you. That does give me a much better understanding and appreciation.
Good.
Okay, trustees, any additional questions or comments? Kyle, is this something that communities typically accept or approve?
I see it both ways. So I think the most common that I hear is that the municipality will accept the financial statements and then direct staff to submit it to any agencies that require it. The primary one is the state auditor's office.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comments, board, I'll entertain a motion to accept the 2023 audit report?
I move that we accept the 2023 audit report.
I'll go ahead and second. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the 2023 audit report. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Bo, you and I, after the meeting, see if we can't get this submitted up to the state. Kyle, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Hey,
Victoria?
one other thing, would you, I didn't talk about the management letter. Would you like me to talk about that, or does everybody, I'm sure everybody's read it. Are you okay with it, or?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone's aware that the town kind of generates that portion, is my
Well, that's-
understanding.
No, that's the other document that's on page 2 of the board packet.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's confusing
This one.
because I call it the management letter, and in the document the town generates for the financials is management and discussion and analysis. So yeah, it is kind of confusing. But so if I may, let me talk about this briefly, that little over 3-page document. So as your auditor, our professional standards require us to communicate certain things to you as the board, the governing body of the town. And so that's what this is. The first page there basically talks about my responsibilities as your auditor. Okay. And then down there at the bottom of page 1, going on to page 2, I talked about we look at your internal controls. Well, and this is a comment we had issued in prior years. And primarily that we have a material weakness in your financial reporting. Now, how do I come up with that? Primarily, it's because of the nature and the amounts of the audit adjustments we make. And so that's something, we talk over with staff, and hopefully that some controls can be updated, and even some mitigating controls be put in place so that this doesn't happen. Now, I think, in working, I don't have a crystal ball, but in working with Victoria, I'm again optimistic that hopefully this will go away in the future. But that's one thing, as part of our requirement is to say to you that, hey, we had to make a lot of adjustments. So in order to make your financial statements materially correct. Okay. Then following that part, we talk about, if there were changes in significant accounting policies or accounting estimates, such as your depreciation on your vehicles and equipment and infrastructure. There were none. Significant audit adjustments, well, I referred to that in the material weakness section. So again, we made different adjustments. And then there on page 3, disagreements with management or difficulties during the audit. Well, if we would have had disagreements with management, you would have heard from me before tonight. So that's always a good thing. And then the section there at the bottom, other matters. Again, segregation of duties. Well, this is very common comment that I have in my small municipalities when you have only one person or two people with a lot of control over things. So it's just to kind of make you aware, hey, you have this. It's just a characteristic of the way you're made up. And so sometimes it just requires for a little more compensating controls to kind of offset that. And sometimes a little more involvement with perhaps a board of trustee reviewing certain things such as bank recs, things like that. And then the other thing, during our testing of our disbursements, the purchasing card transactions, two things we noticed. There were some, there were instances of receipts missing. And then also we noticed certain transactions had sales tax paid with them. And I know, looking at your policy, I don't believe that that's allowed or it's forbidden. And so I'm just bringing that up just so that maybe you guys can take a look at that, just to make sure that you are getting all the documentation or receipts and having staff, provide that when it's needed. And so again, that'll just strengthen your controls because purchasing cards, that's a big risk area for a municipality because there's no pre-approval process for transactions. Okay, but I'm not saying get rid of them. I mean, it's just an ease of business things, but it's just making sure that staff knows that procedures and policies of the purchasing cards are being followed. Okay. And then finally, I want to thank Bo and Becky and Victoria for all their hard work in all this. I know it's been a long process and we made it through it, but gosh, they have the hard part in all this of going through and finding answers to information, finding documents for us to look at. And sometimes, it's events that have happened a year and a half ago. So I really do appreciate their help to get us to where we are tonight. So thank you. And that's all I have on the management letter.
Okay, thanks,
One little
Kyle.
comment.
Yeah,
I'd
go ahead,
like to make
Victoria.
about- So one little comment I'd like to make about that. There's adjustments that got made. Mostly these are timing differences, if that makes sense to you. So it really had to do with me and everybody else having to learn when stuff got recognized. So it wasn't like that there was missing transactions. It was that it's just what period of time do these things belong in. So in the whole scheme of things, it wasn't like things were missing. It was just, did they get captured in the right period? And that's important. So it wasn't like we have like people stealing money or being irresponsible or that kind of stuff. It was understanding how the grants worked. And when, some of these things, we get the money first and then we earn it when we spend it. And some of it, we have to spend it and then we get the money. And so anyway, it's a recognition issue more than internal controls makes it sound like things are out of control. And it really was kind of a different issue. It was just like, where do these stuff really belong? If that makes any sense, time-wise.
Okay, thank you. Any closing comments or questions?
Thank you, Kyle, for all your work on this. I'm sorry you got ahead of me a little bit there. I tried to scroll all the way through because these get posted online, and the user has to be able to pause at any point. But thanks for all your work up to here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And Victoria, thanks for all your help on this as well. I really appreciate you helping us get across the finish line for getting our 2025 budget submitted today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be happy when we start seeing the money coming back in.
Yeah. Okay, if there's nothing else, thanks, Kyle. And then we'll proceed on with our next presentation, which is Ms. Rowe from Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, who's our grant coordinator. Is that the right title? Grant navigator, pardon me. She's going to give us kind of walk us through the presentation on our bridge out here.
Can you hear me? There we go. Yes. Karen Rowe I'm a consultant to Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. I am their federal regional grant navigator, meaning that I'm here to help the communities receive federal grants. And the state has put together lots of resources in order to help communities like yourself get these federal grants. So with that, I also have Liz Stanton here with our consultant, HDR. And again, the state has a system set up that they assist writing these grants at the state's cost. So it's good timing after your audit. This is really just more of an informational, and are we going in the right direction? And do you approve this approach as we move into submitting a federal grant? Because like your budget indicated, there's a lot of, you got to get money out the door, and then you got to build the feds and then you get the money back. So with that, I'll just talk to you about at a high level. That's why we're here. The project that we're looking at in particular is the replacement of the Green Mountain Falls Bridge, or Ute Pass Avenue, just down here from the town hall. It's in poor condition, so we're looking to replace it, make channel improvements to the creek, and add a multi-use path to the bridge as a connection. So we really want to see if you're in agreement on what we're submitting for on the grant and looking at how we would financially make this viable as we proceed. And recognize that these cost estimates are conceptual as well as the designs. We're very early in that process. So these are all estimates. So I have up here what the Protect program is. I'm not going to read it all, but this is a federal grant. And it talks about promoting resiliency, operations, transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation. That's what Protect stands for, but really what it is with the climate changes and with what I would say is ways that we can strengthen our infrastructure so we can be more resilient when it comes to natural disasters, flooding, wildfires. So that bridge is critical for your town, and we would like to replace it to make sure that the town has a bridge that's structurally ready for any natural disaster that might come this way. So I just wanted to go over a little bit of what resiliency means and protect. And these are just some of the definitions of it, but really it just means we want something very hardy. You know, we want something that'll withstand any climate condition. So if wildfires come through, if floods, mudslides after the wildfires, the bridge will stand up. The creek will stay in its alignment, and it won't be an issue for the infrastructure for the town. Next slide. So this bridge is in poor condition right now. It's still safe to drive over, but it is posted for load restrictions. We would also look to realign the channel and improve the resiliency, again, the alignment of the channel if floods or mudslides happen. And we'd also want to add that multi-use path. So I know there's the Discovery Trail that goes through town, and right now you just have those little 3-foot shoulders. This would actually add a path attached to the bridge, like was proposed in the PPRTA as a pedestrian bridge crossing, but this would actually be attached to the bridge. And again, we want to make sure that bridge is there for any evacuation circumstances. So that gets to, you know, the need for the project. I touched on this a little bit. It's load restricted. When they do the rating for the bridge, it's based on the deck, the superstructure, and the substructure. So basically, when they do these bridge inspections, they project out at a high level, if you don't do anything to this bridge, when will it not be functional for use? And they came up with 2040. So it's not an exact number. It's just a projection of, you know, what we need to do in order to get this bridge replaced and get it in better condition. So this is kind of the worst case. I say worst case. It's like the widest the bridge would need to be if it was replaced. And we wanted to make sure to accommodate that in our estimates moving forward. So the top is what we're proposing, again, wider shoulders, and then the multi-use path. And I know Pikes Peak Area Council of Government just finished a study for a regional bike path or multi-use trail throughout the region, and they recommended the 10-foot. As we move on with this, we could narrow that. And we could look at other alternatives. 6 foot's usually the most narrow that you get, but the 10-foot's ideal. So if, and then we would continue that path up from the road or up from the bridge and down from the bridge. If you look at the next slide. So I'll give you a chance to look at it and see if you have any questions on this. Again, this is conceptual, As you widen the bridge, you kind of have to lengthen the bridge too for the channel. For the most part, you see the road shifts to the east. And the trail there, the trail alignment is on the outside attached to the bridge and the road. However, what that would actually look like in the future is still to be considered. But the vision is you build something now that would tie into a system in the future. I know Woodland Park would love to see the bike trail connection from Woodland Park down to Green Mountain Falls. And so this would be great. You'd have a safe way to get across the bridge for those bikes and pedestrians in the future. So the project timeline, just based on all the clearances that you need to do, you'd have to design it. You'd have to go through Army Corps of Engineers. You'd have to get all those environmental clearances. So if we submit the grant in February, we get successful on the grant, you get your contract in place, you get your consultant on board, you get it designed in 2026, possibly 2027 into 2027. And then you could go out for bid and start construction in 2028. We think it'd be a one season construction. But again, the seasons matter as to when you can work in the creek, the water flow in the creek and things like that. So this is a conservative estimate on the time frame it would get to get the project done. So these are high level projected costs. Again, they're just estimates at this time. But again, the design, the environmental clearance and the permits needed to start construction is around 744,000, 750, somewhere around there. And then construction costs for the channel. So again, the channel would have to be restored or shaped so that it can be very resilient to different events. And then the bridge costs, that includes the construction inspection, as well as the contractor's work. And so the total cost we'd be looking for from the grant is 7.9 million. So how, the question is, wow, and that surprised me, 7.9 million. How are we going to get the money to replace that bridge? So if you always want to kind of do worst case, and if you get money back, you get money back or give money back. But what you hate to do is you ask for that money, you get it, and then the costs are way over what you can afford, and you just can't do the project at all. So we'd like to apply for the Protect grant. It's due at the end of February. The state right now, and it's very unique situation where they will provide some local match grant assistance. It's called LOMA, local match assistance for these federal grants. So the main key to applying for that, you need a 20% match for this program. And you need to have that audit done. So that's one reason the mayor is doing that. So he will apply for 1.3 million to the state to see if they'll match that. And I'll show you that number on the next slide. And then for cash flow purposes, so during the audit, they talked about, hey, you can have some money going out and then you bill someone and you get that money back in. We may have to go to the state infrastructure bank just for that cash flow, but that local match assistance might be enough. But conceptually, we're just keeping that in our back pocket. And it would be a loan that we'd be able to pay back. It's through the state. It's for transportation projects only, for communities who can't afford their infrastructure improvements. But it would mainly be for cash flow.
Yeah,
And
Karen,
again, yeah.
if I could interject a little bit, that state infrastructure bank, it's basically if we were to go for $1 million, for example, and I think in some of the analytical stuff, they're recommending around 800,000, but just for example, if we went for $1 million, it's basically, they put the money in the account and we get charged interest from like day one on the full amount. I've contacted 3 banks as a potential alternative. 2 have responded positively that we could potentially get what's called a line of credit, where we're only paying interest on what we draw out. So that's another option I've been kind of looking into outside of the state infrastructure bank.
And the main thing here is you're not committing to anything. And we wouldn't apply even for the infrastructure bank loan. We would submit something saying we're interested in it. We wouldn't apply for it unless we did get the grant. So if the grant came through, we'd say, okay, now we're applying for this state infrastructure loan. And it's approved by the Transportation Commission. It's low risk and easy application. The other match portion, if you go to the next slide, the town of Green Mountain Falls applied through Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority for funds for a safe crossing for pedestrians over Fountain Creek. And so they have agreed that this being attached to the bridge would meet that statement of what you applied for PPRTA. So that 250,000 or so could be applied to a match to the bridge. And would all be part of the same. So this is kind of how you'd fund it in a conceptual, that's why we would submit the grant. And we just want to make sure the board is good with this approach. So next, this is kind of what we're asking is just to, I don't know, approve or accept the approach to pursue the identified funding sources again with the local match assistance. You apply for it. They tell you how much they would approve you for. You submit the grant, and then we wait to hear on the grant. So, you know, the state's been doing this throughout, and they've been given $10 million, of which I think $6 million has been awarded to grants. And they have like somewhere between 2 and 4 million left. So it depends again whether other grants are successful or not. So they're still looking at that. But Green Mountain Falls would apply for 1.3 million. And they would let us know before we submitted the grant application if that was acceptable or
that-
awarded.
If I could add, that's kind of part of the push to try to get the audit done, because the state's basically not allowing us to apply for Loma unless we get the audit done, and it has to go up and get submitted, has to get accepted. Then once that's done, then we can go apply for the state, but the grant application is due by the end of February. And so this may take a little bit of time going through the Loma folks. And so that's why the push was to have everything tonight. Something else I might add is if the board is okay, I'd like to maybe begin talks with the property owners that may be affected.
And Mayor, I would just recommend we talk to the consultant on that, because just the right-of-way acquisition is through the federal process. So we just want to make sure we're not violating anything in the future federal process of property acquisition.
So I presume we're purchasing more right away for the bridge construction?
Well, again, since it's a federal grant, we got to be careful on how we do that. It could be an easement. In one case, we could potentially look at a land swap. So yeah, there's just potentially different things, but yeah, I'll have to make sure I don't stumble.
Yeah, the design of the bridge is very, very conceptual. So right now they're looking at acquiring as little as possible on the west side, the upstream side of the Fountain Creek. And the downstream side, we might need more property there. But again, the federal process for right away, make sure that we do a fair negotiation, fair rate, all that stuff. We don't know for sure how much right away would be needed from either side, but yes, some right away would be needed.
This bridge slide, this proposed layout, where did you get this information, and are these accurate survey lines, right-of-way lines?
For the layout one, the one where you're looking above,
Right. It's,
I don't know. I think it might be conceptual for now.
who made it?
So Basis Engineering did a conceptual drawing, and then HDR took that and upgraded it, I guess. So this is primarily from HDR, but a preliminary study was done with Basis.
Yeah. Do you remember a while back when we approved about 10 grand to go to Basis to try to do the initial engineering estimates? That's,
Okay. Well, it almost looks like the house there, is on town right away if those lines are accurate. And also our road is off the right of way, so I
yeah,
think we probably need some accurate drawings.
we're going to need, well, we'd have to do the surveys.
So this is conceptual, so we'd have to verify right away. Again, all that takes time and money. I'm not even quite sure exactly where the right of way lines are on this, but yes, that it just takes time and money to do it. I think we're also looking at, and I did verify that you've done this before in 2023. There's another federal grant coming up in March that you can apply for rural and tribal pilot assistance, and it can pay for the design. So we'll try that again. Again, it's 750,000 just for the design. And these are all very complicated elements. And so the right of way will be verified. And again, that's why we really put on there conceptual, because the alignment of the road could change, the width of the bridge could change in the road. The type of bridge makes a difference too on how that would look. And they don't have the exact type of bridge that would be replaced right now. Again, that takes a little bit more
Right,
effort.
and rerouting the Mountain Creek.
Yeah, that's that channel alignment and channel restoration. Yeah, so, during construction, how that works and, the alignment sometimes varies on how you can build it, so you want to make sure you're getting cars through there if you can during construction. So you'd have to look at that. It gets more complex when you actually do it. So this is just conceptually how that would look, but it doesn't have a lot of the real engineering details. You got to get into the vertical part of that too. And, how much earthwork do you have and where does it end? And those elements come into play with right away, whether you build retaining walls.
So as far as concept is concerned, you're asking us to approve this approach, but are there other options? I mean, you didn't present any, you can do A, B, or C. Are you just happy with this one particular one?
Yes, it's this grant opportunity for tax. Right now, we don't have enough design funds to look at more things in detail, to look at.
I think that might be going out. Let's try this one.
So we looked at this bridge to go after bridge investment program. We looked at a RAISE grant. The PROTECT grant seemed like the best federal grant to replace a bridge. So the problem is the bridge needs to be replaced. How do you get the funds to do that? How much does it cost to get that bridge replaced? And so we only have a little bit of money to start looking at that. And so from a high level, we're saying, here's our best estimate, educated guess on that. Here is a federal grant that's coming up that would not cost the town money other than PPRTA to replace it. So until we get more design funds somehow or another, we can't go further to looking at other options. In terms of other federal grants, we think this has a great opportunity to be selected when you look at the criteria.
Thank you.
And
Okay,
is there any hint or sense of vulnerability to the federal funds that we're seeking? With the change in administration,
I
is
would
there a sense
say,
that it's
yes, there was news today that President Trump may change how it's called the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act funds might be spent. So yes, there is some risk to that. There's no risk to the town of Green Mountain Falls in terms of moving forward to this. This doesn't change your costs or your efforts, other than the Mayor Dixon applying for a few things and reviewing this application. But yeah, with the new administration, there's a little bit of unknown.
and so on that, clarify why we would be the ones to pursue the funding source, but we're not at risk for that funding. Can you explain that?
You're not at risk at losing any money on your side because you're not paying for the consultant applying for the grant. You're not applying for the local match assistance. You will not go out for a loan unless you get the grant. So the risk right now is the state is applying for this grant, coordinating with you on the details just of what you need and paying for the consultant to do it. If you apply for the grant, the administration says that grant goes away. We see what other grants are out there and start again, I guess is the way to look at it. Right now, we're not asking for any funds from the town other than the 250,000 for a crossing over Fountain Creek, which you can go back to the drawing board and do that separately if someday that's what you want, but you're still going to have a poor bridge. So yeah, there is a little bit of risk that you're not going to get this grant. I would say that. But I would say that it's a low risk on the town. You're not spending money, you're not spending resources and time other than Mayor Dixon's time and coordinating with the consultant to get this grant submitted.
Do you stick with this, negotiating this process?
I do. So my position is in place and through the state of Colorado through March 2026. It's not officially extended another year, but they have told us it will extend another year. So we're waiting to hear. Yeah, for sure it is. So that's what I always say. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You had asked about other options. Again, I started off with a different kind of grant. When we look at that, we check with the consultant, we see what's really competitive, what matches really well, in terms of our project need, and conditions. But I will be here. So even if we go for a Protect grant and, something else comes up in the meantime, we'd probably go for that also. Bailey, I'd say Park County, the town of Bailey won what was called Reconnecting Communities grant for 1.2 million of federal funds, 300,000 match. But they're applying for another grant right now called Raise, very similar, but it's like another $1 million that they're asking for, another 1.5 million. So again, you just keep applying for as many federal grants as match your needs for your project as you can.
trustees, any additional questions or comments? And keep in mind, we're asking for approval to basically go after the funding. The first step will be to apply for what's called the LOMA for 1.33 million. And then hopefully if we get news on that and it's positive, then we can put that in with the Protect grant due the end of February. So yes, I guess I am ready for a motion.
All right. I'd like to move that we pursue the funding, for the Loma funds
And for the Protect grant.
and for the protection.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we pursue funding to replace our bridge through Loma and our Protect grant. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
ex-
you.
One
as
way or
well.
another, I want to get this bridge replaced. I want to get the money for it. So that's what we're rooting for.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Please stick with us.
Yes, please. Okay, that brings us up to our final item. It's 6C, the Parks, Rec, and Trails Committee members. Again, if we have no issues with both of them together, we could do them all at once like we did last time. So is there any discussion, or if there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept them as the new PRT committee members.
I'll go ahead and second. It's been moved and seconded that we accept Mark Scott Nash and Jay Keita. Mark Scott Nash is new, Jay Keita to be a renewal for Parks, Rec, and Trails Committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving right along. Do we have any discussion items? I think I might have made the announcement earlier that we got our 2025 budget submitted and accepted, which was this, it took us twice. I didn't have everything in it the first time. So, but yeah, so 2025 budget is done deal. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have word back on the audit.
Yeah, I got a phishing scam with your name on it this afternoon.
Okay. Any correspondence?
Do you guys report those or no?
Yeah, we send them to our IT.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's is it phishing or is it
it's
is it
phishing.
spoofing?
No, it's phishing. They're asking for money in
Yeah.
your name. Venmo.
Spoofing.
Does Venmo work for you? Because I'll
Yeah.
just.
Nope. 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 If you get anything, always check the address.
$1,497.
Yeah, always check the address. Someone's out there spoofing me again. Not the first time.
Well, yeah, if anybody's asking for money
Oh, yeah.
related
No.
to the government, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
anyone's
a-
asking for money.
Yeah,
the
that's a-
first thing is no. Okay, do we have any correspondence? Okay, we're to our second public comment period. Do we have anyone in the audience that'd like to comment? Not seeing any. What about on Zoom? Not seeing any. Okay, I have on my phone, I have 7:13. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.